Hello and welcome to the 17th episode of the Engage Your Fanbase podcast. And I am Kara Karma of Simon Says Booking and Publicity and EngageYourFanbase.com. And as always, I am joined by my awesome co-host, Erwin Schmankwitz of Ever Upward Entertainment.
That is
Hello,
correct.
Erwin.
Hey, how's everyone doing?
Good. Awesome. And today we have two past guests who we are lucky enough to have join us again on a different topic. Today we're going to be talking about music publicity from the publicist and the writer's perspectives. We've got Sarah Burke of showtheshow.com, NYS Music, and Live for Live Music. And we've got Carly Shields of Jet Trails Media. And why don't you guys give us a little bit information about what you guys are doing, and let our viewers and listeners know a little bit about your backgrounds real quick, and then we'll get into some of our questions. Sarah, why don't you go ahead and start off?
Okay, I am Sarah Burke, and I'm a writer for a few different websites. I'm managing editor of showtheshow.com. And I also write for Live for Live Music and NewYorkStateMusic.com as well.
Cool. I'm Carly. Like Kara said, Jet Trails Media is a company I started with a good friend of mine, my business partner. We're based in Richmond, Virginia. We do booking and promotions. And I also actually do a good bit of writing for Fanbase.com during the summer when I can have time to go to festivals and do reviews and stuff. So I have a sort of a good perspective on how to pitch to writers, knowing what they need in a way, and the publicity side of it as well.
Cool. Are you guys, is she having an issue for you guys as well? Or is it just
Same
me?
here. Carly, sorry, but you're cutting out. Yeah.
Uh-oh. Go figure. It was me last time. Let's see what I can do. I'll try to close all my other tabs. What about?
Nope. We
worries.
lost her. She went too far.
Well, don't close that tab. Is she coming back? All right, well, there she is.
She does.
She's got a great picture. I love your picture.
Super fun. Hopefully this works. I closed all my tabs. Hopefully this works.
Cool. Yeah, you're good. You're good on mine.
So far, so good. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
sure.
So one of the questions we came up with to talk about tonight is starting out by talking about the difference between publicity and promotion, because they often get used interchangeably. I'm not sure who wants to jump in about that one.
Yeah,
we'll put that up in our little
rephrase that question. What Kara just said is that publicity and promotion sometimes gets interchanged, and people use them interchangeably. So that's what she just said, and you just cut out on.
Okay. I missed that whole question.
Yeah, they get used interchangeably a lot, and I'm not sure who actually. I thought that was a really great thing to bring up.
I did.
Was that you, Carly? That brought
I
that
just
up?
sort of came to realize the differences between publicity and promotion, and obviously, of course, promotion is a big part of publicity, but you can have a promoter, for example, who's going to do something completely different than your publicist. Your publicist is not necessarily going to work on your
Why don't you explain that
and your promoter is not necessarily going to send out your press kits, for example. So there's lots of different things that come with the different jobs. And of course, you know, publicity is definitely a bigger umbrella, and marketing is even the bigger umbrella to that. But promotion is something that I think a lot of bands can control on their own. A lot of bands can head their own street team and do those sort of promotional things. And whereas once you've gotten a really good handle on your promotion, maybe it's time to hire a publicist to do those other things that also need to get done. So that's sort of where, I mean, they work together a lot, of course, and then they're a little different as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these things, you know, in the industry, and whether, you know, you are promoting shows, whether you're promoting albums, you know, again, it's a big teamwork effort. There's things that come from all sides, but I do think it is important to kind of make the distinction between you know, a promoter and a publicist, because like you said, a publicist isn't going to necessarily promote your shows in the way that a promoter would, you know, that in the end really, you know, would help a promoter to get heads to those said shows.
Yeah, exactly. And two, I think when you hire a publicist, when you start to do publicity efforts, the promoter will be included in that, but not necessarily won't necessarily come with that. So if you hire an outside publicist, they're not necessarily going to have a promoter for you to work with regularly. But you know, whereas like Erwin was saying, a one-off show maybe has their own promoter. Maybe you have a promoter for the whole tour, something like that. So they'll always work together. One encompasses the other, but they're definitely two distinct. And a band, I think, really can control. I mean, publicity, I would say, is where a band has the most control of what they can do beyond making really, really good music and performing really well. You know, you can control your own promotions. You can control, to a certain extent, your publicity. We'll get into this later, I'm sure, but the relationship that you as a musician build with your writers is crucial, and you can totally control that, you know, by being a nice, genuine person and playing good music and giving them a story that they want to write about. That's really, really easy to write for them. Really easy. Yeah,
absolutely. And you know, going on that, like you're saying, in terms of, you know, a musician choosing a promoter and a publicist, I do feel like sometimes musicians are, they don't have as many choices in terms of promoters. You know, a lot of promoters work with certain venues, work with certain types of shows, whereas publicity is more something that a musician can go out and, you know, reach out to and kind of do a little bit more research and find out what is a bit better fit for them. Whereas, you know, a promoter is going to be a promoter regardless of, you know, who you're playing with or when you're playing. You know, those promoters are kind of focused on those one venues or that one genre of band per se.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm having trouble with that. Is anybody else having trouble?
No, I just was going to say, I think I'm having a lot of technical difficulties, okay. So I think I'm going to have to.
But I mean, on that, as far as publicity goes, you really can control a lot of those aspects. And I mean, Sarah, how easy is it to just be, you know, handed a really good press release or a really good story, and suddenly you've got an article you can pump out, no problem?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you've reached out to me since we've met, and there's other bands that have reached out to me, and it's like, oh, we've got this going on, or we're going to be putting on a new album, or we're going to be doing this or that or the other thing. Do you want to write about it? And when you build these relationships with these bands and these agents and these publicists, it just makes me as a writer, my job easier. And it's especially when the musicians are really nice and they're really easy to work with. Of course, I'm going to help them out any way that I can, because they're just good people, and it's like they're going to help me and I'm going to help them. It's just a great relationship to build with these agents and publicists in the industry.
Definitely. Sarah, what if I could get your intel on this, kind of going on to the next question, what else, you know, other than personally, as a writer, do you really look for in musicians? If a musician comes up to you, what would be kind of, the selling point of one musician compared to another, that you would be more inclined to work with a certain band or a certain musician?
I think a lot of it is just a lot of times it's their excitement, their personality, their engagement within the industry themselves. I haven't really come across too many egos, but that kind of gets in the way a little bit. But yeah, when a musician comes up to me and they're very easy to talk to, and I just ask them questions, tell me your story, and they're willing to sit down and take the time to talk to me, whether they want to be written about or not, just to hear what they have to say. It makes it so much easier to just continue a relationship over time, whether they want me to write about them now or if they just want to hold off a little bit for whatever the reason may be. That I try to maintain that relationship over time. And eventually, we just build this great relationship, and then I become friends with some of these people, and it just makes my job easy. And when they have something that they want to get out to the public, then they can turn to me, and it works out great.
And what about, and this, kind of goes to both of you guys already, and I'm sure, my expertise is booking and management. And again, a lot of this does translate from, one area of the industry to another. But are there any, pet peeves or anything that you guys have come across from musicians, things that musicians should kind of really stay away from doing, anything that can really turn off a writer other than, obviously the ego and what you were just mentioning, which is obviously a big turnoff again in any aspect of the industry? Yeah.
I think ego is really the biggest turnoff, but I think that's for anybody. That can go in any industry across the board. Pet peeves though, I think I haven't really come across it too much, but if people are just continuously getting in touch with me, like, why haven't you done anything? It's like, well, because I have all these other projects going on. It's just that constant, but I think sometimes that just has to do with bands that have never had exposure and they don't really know how to engage the industry. So they just, if the first time they might come across somebody like Carly or me, they might just be like, oh my God, I don't know how to deal with this, but let me latch on. And they're just so persistent that it's almost like you have to take their hand and show them the ropes.
Right.
But that's for the young musicians that don't really know how to handle getting their word out about their music.
Carly, do you have something to say?
Yeah, it's not so much a pet peeve as it's something that I was saying earlier, having a story, and second of all, handing the story to the writer, because as Sarah said, she's overwhelmed with requests to write, and I'm sure would like to write as much as she possibly can. I think we've all expressed this. There are not enough hours in the day for as many articles as could possibly be written about so many great bands. But one thing that has become increasingly more apparent to me, and I think important for every band, is that you have a story about your band or your CD or your project or the tour. There is some good story there, even if you have to develop it a little bit, certainly not make it up, but dig deep for the story and find out why you're doing whatever you're doing. What is your goal with reaching out to this artist to the writer rather, ultimately. And then when you do that, define that goal and what you want to happen and explain your story, express your story as neatly and directly as you can, so that the writer can go in there and see, okay, here are the facts of this story. I can add my own flair to make it a really well-rounded article. And depending on where she's publishing it, maybe Sarah would do something different for Live for Live Music than she would for Show the Show or what have you. But you deliver, you have this story, and you can make up a story for your band as a whole, like your band story, which I think is critical for all bands to have a story. You have a story for your album. You have a story for whatever the big publicity push is right now. What is the story behind it? Why should people care? Why should writers care? And how are you going to make it so that the writer can write the best possible story for you? Because ultimately that's what people are reading is articles, these articles.
Yeah,
can you hear me finally?
Yeah,
Yeah, I had to restart my router. I think that you just hit the nail on the head. It's like, why should you care? And the point is it's not so much why should the writer care, but you think about why should the end reader care? Why is this interesting to the end reader?
That's true.
So you really hit the nail on the head there. Sarah, I interrupted you.
Yeah, I was just going to add to Carly's point where what is the story of a band? The first thing that I usually do when I get approached by a band that I don't know anything about is I like to look at their social media. I like to check out their Facebook. Do they have a website with a link to, do they have like their own website? And from that, I like to check out the band bio and get a little bit of history of the band, find out where are these guys coming from? What brought them up to this point? So when bands actually have pages that give information to readers and they provide a background as to how they got there, maybe some music links, things like that, it makes it so much easier to want to know more. If you just get to a page and all they have is Facebook, and then you're like, where's the link? You want to know more. So that's a really good tool, I think, for bands. If they don't have their own website and they really want to get out there, they should really get a website outside of Facebook and outside of Twitter so that fans can go there and they can find out more with all of their music and their bios and their contact information, things like that. So that's a really good step that I've seen that bands take. Yeah,
definitely. I think, I like these blabs because, they seem to tie into each other very well weekly over the past, however many weeks with all these guests that we have. But, a website is a must. If you're a band out there without a website, you are doing something wrong. You need a website. Another thing is, like you mentioned, Sarah, bio. Bios kind of go overlooked sometimes with bands. These are things that they change. Bios change. That the bio is your base story. You can't keep using the same bio, a couple of years after you've started your band and expect, this bio to be a good representation of your act and of your band. So, these things that, we might think on our end that are kind of, common sense are things that do tend to be overlooked sometimes by acts. And I do think that bios are, a very, very important aspect. Because like you said, if someone's giving you a link, the first thing that you're going to go to their bio page and read up on their history of the band.
Well, and the bios they get used over and over, and they are the critical, central piece of your brand as a band. It's just so critical that piece. How many times are you using bits and pieces of their, how many times do you see that over and over? Maybe not you, but every time that I've written a press release that's included bios, they're using bits and pieces of that. That's it. And it's the same wording over and over. And if your bio is not using your band brand, then it's not getting out there what you need, what you want people to know about your band and what you want people to be thinking about your band.
And there's also other tricks that I've seen bands do. Like, you don't have to be really serious all the time. Perfect example, I just recently did an album review for Lucas Nelson's new album. And when I went to their page, check out the bio of the band. It's the funniest thing. So and a lot of times people they'll just skim right over it. They won't even pay attention. But because that's part of my job, I thought, wow, this is one of the funniest bios I've ever seen on a website for a band. And I think it's probably because people just don't pay attention. Except for people.
That's I think that's so awesome that they do that. And Erwin said something really important that I didn't even think of until very recently, like the last couple months. Yes, of course you should change your bio. The bio should be developing and growing every single time. And I think one bigger picture thing that we're all getting at right now is the need for a basic press kit. no matter what you're doing, to have all those elements in line, even if you don't plan on sending your press kit out to any press sources, to have a bio like we were talking about, which describes not only your band and your background, but your goal for whatever you're doing. Your website, I think too, beyond Facebook and social media, you should have a Bandcamp. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I go to Bandcamp and SoundCloud just to stream music.
Yep.
And I find new bands that way. So I think any band is doing themselves a disservice by not having social media, Facebook, Bandcamp, SoundCloud. Maybe even Sonic Bids is a great way to get all your press kit things together. Like it's like a checklist almost. And you can do that all online. I think Sonic Bids charges now, but you can at least see the outline of things that you need. But all of these elements that we were just talking about for any publicity campaign, for any outreach to a writer, you can send a writer an EPK pretty much straight up: a photo, a bio, your social media stuff, some tracks,
Video.
your discog, whatever the point of the press release is. You send that all to a writer. I mean, Sarah, you would get that and be like, okay, this is done. All I have to do is ifs, ands, or buts, dot my T's, cross my I's, and perfect.
It's when everything is right there, the press release comes, everything is right there, and it's like, oh, okay, this is easy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If I have a couple questions, I'll email, but that's about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let me ask you guys this, because I'm not very familiar with this either. What do you guys think of, electronic press kits versus physical press kits? And I know, again, this is something that, has been mentioned in our past discussions of, we're in, physical press kits aren't really a thing anymore in the digital age today. But, I know for a fact that, as a booking agent, as a manager, that, there's a lot of festivals that I've worked with that they won't even take electronic press kits. And the number's very small, but, it makes sense for those people who, kind of prefer those physical, materials. What do you guys feel about that?
I'm a big fan of physical press kits. And I'll tell you why. It's so, you would think that it would be easier or the thinking now is that you're going to get lost because everyone's mailing in their stuff. Your CD is just going to get pushed to the side. That's what people think. But now I think because everyone does EPKs all the time, electronic press kits all the time, and anybody can do it and anybody can get your email if they're savvy enough. Anyone who you're sending it to is absolutely bombarded with EPKs every day. And you need to do something that stands out in a way, but it has to fit with your brand. If you are a dubstep band, you probably would not send a physical EPK, a physical press kit. But like a punk band who really is into like tapes and stuff, they would probably benefit from doing a physical press kit. If there's something cool, like, okay, with the bells, I really want to create a physical press kit that looks like a leather bound book, like it's like really just a folder, really, but it's printed like a leather book so that it looks kind of rustic-y, and when you open it up, you've got a couple papers in there, and that's all it is. It's like a folder, and it comes with a little CD insert. So I don't have the money to make that. I'd like to, but something that stands out that's not like flashy. Like you don't need to send like cookies with your press kit. Nothing outstanding. I've heard of someone do that before. Nothing like outlandish, but definitely I think if you are going to send a press kit and you really want to mean it, I think a physical press kit is good. Of course, when you send physical press kits, you have to do it the way that they want it. Like sometimes they won't even take it if you don't follow whoever's exact specifications. So you have to be really, really careful about that, because you don't want to send something A, too unsolicited, and then B, a sloppy mess that they don't even want. So you got to definitely do some research, but I think there's a lot of value in physical press kits. And of course, there's still a ton of value in electronic press kits, not only because they're so easy to make and put together, but you can just shoot them off. And some people really do use them. Sonic Bids, some festivals only accept applications through Sonic Bids, which is EPKs. So that's what I think.
I agree that it stands out completely, but the reality is that the vast majority of bands don't have the resources, and like you're saying, it's so expensive to be sending things in the mail. It's picking and choosing some specific targets, and like you're saying, sticking to your brand. But you know, those specific special targets, it definitely makes sense for some bands. And I think you're definitely hit the nail on the head with that. It's definitely, they're not, people aren't being bombarded by physical press kits anymore, at least the majority of people.
No.
Are you being bombarded by physical press kits, Sarah?
No. It's all electronic.
I'll bet your email's full though.
Yes.
Yeah. So I missed a lot of where we are, so I don't know where we are in our questions.
We are. Let's talk about when and we did kind of touch on this already. But you know, when and why to hire a publicist. You know, it is important to note that publicity is expensive for bands. You know, my personal opinion is once you've, you know, started building in certain markets, if you have an album release, a big event is kind of a good time to start thinking about publicity, so that, you know, that you can get the word out for these shows and, you know, around an album or whatnot. Do you guys have any, you know, input in that and in certain, as far as certain times for when to actually, you know, reach out to a publicist?
I think I guess the takeaway, I don't know about I think you kind of is, well, I guess Carly earlier was talking about, you know, making sure that you have a reason to, and having that hook, and having a purpose for it, you know, not just we're a band and here we are and when we need publicity, but, you know, like you're saying, an album release or reaching out to new markets or that kind of thing. But I guess the thing that it's kind of off of what you're talking about, but it's really important that when you're thinking about hiring a publicist, that you're thinking about it ahead of time enough, because I can't tell you how many times I mean reached out to, you know, like 2 weeks before an album release, you know, and it's so important to give yourself enough lead time to do things the right way and get your message out there in enough time, and give the writers enough time to do their job. But anyway, that was my 2 cents.
Yeah, I would say definitely you've got to have the income for sure. And publicists can be so expensive. I mean, obscenely expensive. Especially they want to be hired for, you know, a campaign, they'll call it. It's like a big chunk of time, usually like 3 to 4 months. So you have to pay a monthly fee every month, and it can get really, really expensive. But that's what a campaign needs, is a good chunk of time. Like Kara was saying, if you are really thinking about a publicist, start thinking about it, I would say at least 6 months out, because the publicist is going to want the campaign for 3 to 4 months minimum. Writers are going to need a month minimum to schedule in whatever they're going to do for you. So you want to start shopping around a publicist 6, 7, maybe a year. Maybe you start looking at publicists as soon as you think you're ready, and you find the right one for the right price, who likes your brand, likes your music, wants to help you out. And then the other thing that I was going to say, I can't remember. Go on. Hiring a publicist. I don't remember. Lost it. But yeah, a lot of planning time, a lot of money for sure. And yeah, you gotta have a goal in mind. You can't, you know, there's not really, there was a band, Major and the Monbacks over here, who are so great. I love them, but they I spent, you know, 60% of their Kickstarter money, instead of reimbursing themselves for the album or ultimately paying for the album, on the publicist. And it really didn't get them very far. Of course, now they're working with Matt White, so maybe it did help. I don't know, but I don't think we're that pleased with it. So you have to know when it's the right time, and look for the right person.
Yeah. And giving yourself the time does give you the time to find the right person and the right fit. So, yeah.
And don't jump the gun. I mean, I would like to be a publicist one day, a real full-blown publicist, but knowing that, I wouldn't want any artist to rush into something like that, a contract that they might not be able to afford or that might not ultimately pay off. Because there are, even though I want to get paid for this stuff, there's a lot of things that you can do on your own, that you can do well on your own, like reaching out to writers, for example, like getting your press kit together. And two, when you go to a publicist, they're going to want to see that you have done some of that you have a press kit together, that you have some social media presence, that you have garnered some fans in a number of cities who will respond well to whatever publicity efforts, get made there, go forth there. So don't rush yourself, don't pressure yourself, but when you're ready, you
I think it's a good point to make. Like all this, it's important that everyone is kind of on the same level with everything. There are so many publicists, so many publicity companies out there, that, you can take the time to research, and, chances are that a lot of the bands that are in your genre or, that are kind of very similar to you work with the same publicist as well, or with the same company. There's, for instance, in the jam scene, there's companies out there that work with, Dopapod and Pigeons Playing Ping Pong and Talk and, all these other bands that, can focus on that. Whereas, there's other PR companies that, do more of, punk and rap. And it's like, you can spend, like you said, Carly, a good amount of money on, monthly retainers, for these PR companies that really in the end won't really get you really anywhere, really, so just to reiterate that it is important to, not rush into finding, a PR company or a publicist.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I still don't know where we are on the list, so or when you get to
we're pretty much
run this one.
Done at this point. I think we kind of touched on all these things without even really kind of going to the agenda.
Do you want to just maybe get some takeaway advice from you guys?
Yeah,
from your
definitely.
perspectives.
Sure.
Basically, on the writer's perspective, I just think that if bands really want to get the word out there for what they're doing, whether it be an album release or if they've got a tour coming up or if they're going to be playing a festival, I would just suggest that reach out to people that are normal writers, regular writers that you see doing all kinds of articles, whether it be for Live for Live Music or New York State Music or Show the Show. Those are just some of the websites that I work for. But anybody that you see out there that you like their writing, just reach out to them. If you've never had anything published about your band before, and if you don't hear from them, I would just say, try another writer, just keep going, because you will get the attention of somebody and somebody will get the word out there. It's just a matter of time, really. And if you are at a festival and you are backstage and you do run into a writer, I would suggest that you go up and talk to them. Don't be shy. That's how I met Carly. We met at Lock-In, and it's been great. So those are the kinds of things that I would suggest if there's a band out there that doesn't really want to jump into working with a publicist and doesn't really have an agent yet, but they're still feeling out the waters. I would just say that try some of those things, and also to have a website and make sure you have plenty of social media. That's my suggestion.
Sort of following that, if you have friends who love your band and want to write or can write or are interested in that kind of thing, all of these blogs, first of all, there are so many music blogs online. So if you think you've found all of them, keep searching, because there are hundreds more. It's endless. So many. So, and there's always somebody who reads them. So even if it looks like, obviously if it hasn't been updated in 6 months, don't email them. But if it doesn't look like it's being read, I bet you someone is reading it. So it's worth reaching out to. And also wanted to say, print magazine is definitely on the out. but it's worth it if you can make a connection that you don't have to pay for.
Right.
So college zines, free publications, Appalachian Jam, which I think I mentioned last time, is a great one. But those kinds of things, don't neglect them just because they're not online. They have a lot of value too, as far as writing stuff. And back to what I was saying, if you've got friends who are talented writers or want to write, tell them to reach out to the blogs too, all of them, because Live for Live Music, I'm sure New York State Music, I'm sure Grateful Web. I mean, there's so many. I can't even begin to list all these blogs. There's so many, and they love new writers. They're willing to try you out. If you are a writer in that way and you want to be given a chance to do that, guarantee you someone will give you a chance. And you've got a friend who's in a band that you want to help out, it's worth a try. Or you're a band and you've got a friend who's a writer, I would definitely make that suggestion. I guess other takeaway pieces is the importance of a press kit, the importance of positive relationships with everyone who supports you in any promotional publicity kind of way. Carry that with you and return to them and help them out whenever you can too. It's all about positive relationships, I would say, especially with publicity. It's a lot of, I don't want to say schmoozing because that undercuts it, but it is, a lot of making nice and talking with friends and doing what we're doing right now, talking, making connections, advocating for your project and your goal and your dreams and your story in every way that you can. Like we were talking about in the beginning, there's a difference between promotion and publicity, but they work hand in hand for sure. So, and don't be afraid to take on something that you want to do for your band that you think you need a publicist for. Try it, do it yourself. See if you get somewhere, look it up, do research online. I can't tell you how many times I've just Googled how to write a press release. I can't even, I write probably 10 press releases a month and I still look up different ways to do it till I find the most effective way. Google it. Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah. Parting thought, go to Google.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything.
Google it. It'll be fun.
All right. Well, I'm so sorry for all the technical difficulties tonight, guys, but that was awesome. What I caught of it was awesome. I'm sure all the rest of it was awesome too. But thanks, guys. And so this has been the 17th episode of the Engage Your Fanbase podcast, and I'm Kara Karma, and as always, we've got Erwin Schmankwitz of Ever Upward Entertainment. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Carly. I hope we can find an excuse to have you guys on again.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
we gotta figure out something. So thanks a lot, and we'll see you soon. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. See ya. Thanks.